Hello everyone, this is Defense Politics Asia, and this is the summary for the day of 534th to the 536th. Yeah, correct, 34th, 36th, for the 11th to 13th of August. Let's start off with missile strike. Russia have struck the Kolomyya air base near Kolomyya. Basically, it's actually more nearer to Khorolivka. They strike this air base with so-called precision, long-range precision weapons. So this is actually in the Ivano-Frankivsk region. Not much details we have, but this actually, you can see, this is actually a very remote region. As you know, one of the furthest place you can fire at from Russia. And moving on to the Kupiansk front. At the Kupiansk front, the Russian forces continue their Kupiansk offensive, and fighting is reported at Sinkivka from the 11th all the way to the 13th. And on the 13th, we only have reports of the Ukrainian counterattack. Otherwise, mainly there's constant Russians attacking in this direction, and then the Ukrainians counterattacking. And basically, the situation over here is extremely dynamic. But the Ukrainians continue to hold Sinkivka. It has not fallen just yet. And so moving on, there is fighting reported at Vyshana from the 11, 12, and 13 reports coming from the Zapad group of forces of the Russian side. And they, according to their reports, it seems like they're constantly pushing forward and they're moving forward further and further away from Vyshana. And currently it's kind of unclear exactly where the front line is, because the Russians consistently say that they're capturing new grounds, new strongholds, new observation posts, new stronghold, new observation posts. So it's kind of unclear how far they have pushed just yet. We shall wait for pro-Russian sources or pro-Ukrainian sources telling us in their mapping. I think they also do not have the information, so generally the mappings have not changed. There is also fighting reported at Peshov-Travnevy on the 11th and on the 12th. And the 12th is actually your Ukrainian counterattack, but largely it's the Russians that are pushing in this front line. Because when they are reporting the attacking, generally it's actually across the whole front, the Russians are actually pushing. Over at Avdiivka, there is a Ukrainian Defense Ministry reported the Russians attack on the 11th, and on the 12th, the Russians apparently attacked at north of Klishchiivka. This is Klishchiivka, so the attack was in this direction over the past 2 days. And on the 11th, they also reported fighting on the east of Avdiivka. This is reported by Surya Maps, with the Russians pushing this way, getting closer and closer to Avdiivka. And there is this long time ago. So basically that's all from the Kupiansk front, this Kupiansk. And moving on south to the Svatove front. This is Svatove. At the Svatove front, at the northern flank of the Svatove front, we have fighting reported at Novosibirsk. According to Deep State UA, there is still fighting reported at Novosibirsk on the 11th, with the Deep State UA, the pro-Ukrainian source, reporting that the Russians are putting pressure on the Ukrainians. However, information from the Russian Defense Ministry only suggests that the Ukrainians are the one attacking on the 11th and on the 12th. So they are consistently saying that the Ukrainians are trying to attack back to recapture lost positions. Russian lines is can be here, it's not so clear. Some say that it's just off the village only, but the Russians are not making any offensive action around Novosibirsk, it seems, because I think they are just busy, entrenching themselves and securing the newly captured positions. And in the southern flank of the Svatove front, we have fighting reported in the southeast of Andreyivka on the 12th and on the 13th. This is reported by the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, with the Russians attacking in this direction, which I find this rather interesting. Because if you look at the locations, the Russian pushing in this direction. Previously, the Russians were pushing in this direction, threatening to go all the way to this road around here. This is the road, and the Russians were actually pushing up to this point. Looks like they are looking for a new vector of attack, going this direction. So further south, we have Ukrainians counter-attacking the state Russian salient, with the Ukrainians attacking towards Serhievka and towards Novoyehorivka. Fighting near Serhievka is reported by the Russian Defense Ministry on the 12th of August. And for Novoyehorivka was on the 11th and on the 13th, according to the Russian Defense Ministry of the fighting at Novoyehorivka. And that's all we have. It doesn't look like much. I think the Ukrainian counteroffensive over at this sector also have died down. It looks like they are unable to push harder already. And then we now have this new attack coming from in this direction. And from memory, the Russians attack at Kherson also started off more from the Ukrainian reports. And then as the Russians started to push further and further out, that's when we see the Russian reports starting to appear. And it could be a case where the Russians are actually making some progress in this direction. And maybe if they actually manage to push out or even capture Andreyivka, maybe we'll start to see some reports coming from the pro-Russian side. And that's all from the Svatove front. Moving into the Crimean front. At the Crimean front, there is Ukrainian attack at Chervonopopivka, or near Chervonopopivka, according to the Russian Defense Ministry's entire group of forces. They're attacking in this direction against Chervonopopivka. And further south, we have fighting reported at Yampolivka and Torske. Information coming from Ryba, the pro-Russian source, saying that the Russians attack along the Yampolivka-Torske line. But this on the 11th of August, this has clearly not continued. It's just a one-time raiding. And talking about one-time raiding, we also have the Ukrainians attacking Dibrova on the 11th as well. And in the Serebryansky forestry, the fighting continues with the 11th, 12th, and 13th. The Russian side reported Ukrainian attacks in this forest. The Deep State UA reported the pressure, just now I've mentioned this pressure at Vershana. The Russians also pressuring Ukrainians in the forest on the 11th. But it looks like the Ukrainians are the one making this counter attack within the forest region and also at Dibrova. So this is the ongoing dance between the Russians and the Ukrainians over at the forest near Kreminna. And that's all from the Kreminna front. Into the Sivers front, interesting information coming from Deep State UA. They exclaimed that they actually did not know what is happening over at Bilohorivka in the Luhansk region. This one. And they said that there are videos of some losses of Ukrainian equipments and losses in the trenches. So but they do not have intel about it. So but the videos do suggest that there's nothing good for the Ukrainians happening over there. And but they just want to tell their followers that it's not, they actually do not know this, not that there's nothing happening over here. So it looks like the Russians are, for me, it feels like the Russians are actually doing positional fighting with the Ukrainians. There are some rumors saying that the Russians have captured this this industrial area here, but nothing very very concrete. So news from this area is very sparse. Further south, we have the Russian Defense Ministry reported fighting at Bilohorivka on the 11th and on the 13th, Versely on the 11th and the 13th, and Yakovlevka on the 12th. This seemingly suggests that the Ukrainians are continuing their outer pincer around the Bakhmut front, and so this is ongoing. No other sources reported about this, only the Russian Defense Ministry. Over at the Bakhmut front, in the northern flank of the Bakhmut front, there is fighting reported at Avdiivka. The Russian Defense Ministry on the 11th said that it's near Maloynovka, but this is unlikely to be the case because previously the information already suggests that the Russians have already recaptured this defense line, and Maloynovka is actually over here, a bit of a distance, so maybe it's just the way that the person who's doing the report just wrote it. Then on the 13th of August, we have corroboration that indeed the fighting is in the west part of Yakhidne, according to the Ukrainian Defense Ministry on the 13th of August report. So this is Yakhidne on the western part. So this is exactly where we have the front line. So the Russians are actually in this position. However, are the Russians actually attacking? It's kind of unclear because the Ukrainian Defense Ministry do have this habit of reporting their offensive as Russian attacks. So that's all from the Yakhidne. There is fighting reported at Avdiivka on the 11th, but this by the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, but nothing come out of that. There's no sustained attack over there. Over in the southern flank, in the Klishchiivka region, we have fighting reported at Klishchiivka on the 11th and on the 12th. And on the 11th and 12th, both there is reports of Russians attacking at Klishchiivka, and this includes in the southern part on the 11th. However, there is reports of Ukrainian counterattack on the 12th, and also on the 13th, the Russian Defense Ministry reported fighting on the western part of Klishchiivka. So western part of Klishchiivka is interesting, which means that the Russians might have secured the village largely, and then the Ukrainians are actually trying to counterattack from the high ground, I guess. And there is also footages of a tank push, and there is 3 armored vehicles in that video that push through this field and then lay fire upon all these tree lines and houses. And then as they landed around here, they drop off infantry. They drop off infantry, and then they withdrew. This engagement is likely from the east moving up, and then because from the footages, it looks like there is some kind of a higher ground and a forest further to the rear of the video. And because the video description says Klishchiivka, I think this is the only vector that is possible, that makes sense for this video to happen, because especially there's only one main road that is being featured. There's only one main road being featured, and the Russians attacking in this direction does make sense. And because we have information that the Ukrainians actually captured this area here, the southern part of Klishchiivka, Russian forces pushing in this direction and to lay fire, does make sense to storm and recapture the southern part, which is exactly what we have in terms of the information from Ryba on the 11th of August, saying that they push back the Ukrainian forces in the southern part of the Klishchiivka. So yeah, so that seems to be the situation. There is a Ka-52, the Russian attack helicopter, shot down this morning local time at 5 a.m. according to the Ukrainian Air Force. They say that it was shot down by an anti-aircraft missile unit in the Bakhmut direction. And so that's all from Klishchiivka. Further south, we have fighting reported south of Andreyivka, according to the Ukrainian Defense Ministry. This guy that write this report is awesome, because this particular guy that do this report always put a direction around the town. So like south of Andreyivka, west of Yakhine. So I would highly implore the Ukrainian Defense Ministry to continue to use this method, or get this guy to write the reports, because it does give us more clarity in terms of where the fighting is, rather than just say Andreyivka, but then I wouldn't have know exactly where Andreyivka is. It here? Is it here? Is it here? So now we know it's in the south of Andreyivka, which means the Russians are trying to push back and recapture the southern part, and then probably flank up and the pincer, because they are also pushing south of Klishchiivka, and this will actually cause the Ukrainians to actually wrong color again, push out of Andreyivka. This is probably the plan. There was fighting reported near Bilohora, according to the Ukrainian Defense Ministry. They reported this for 2 days, 11 and on the 12th. And SITREP maps also backtrack on their previous claims. They said he reported that the Russians captured this amount of grounds. And then now he said that the Ukrainians have counterattacked, and the Russians have fall back to this ground, this line over here, due to this Ukrainian counterattack. So this is his claim. So yeah, so maybe that's the case, maybe that's not the case, or maybe there was never this Russian salience at the first place. We do not know, but we just take it with a pinch of salt. That's all from the Bakhmut front. And moving on, we have nothing over the New York front. Moving into the Avdiivka front. This is the fortress city of Avdiivka. And at this fortress city in the north, the Ukrainian forces are attacking at Krasnohorivka on the 12th and on the 13th, according to the Russian Defense Ministry. The direction of the attack is unknown. We're not sure where the attack comes from. And over at Avdiivka, we have fighting reported at Avdiivka on the 11th, 12th, and on the 13th. Similarly, we do not know where the attack comes from. there is two possible directions. One is from Kruta, which is usually mentioned by Deep State UA, or they're coming from the southeast, which was once reported by the Ukrainian Defense Ministry to be the case. Otherwise, we actually do not really know. Over at Vodian, we have a report of fighting over here. According to the Russian Defense Ministry, they say that the Ukrainians attacked Vodian, but this is one off. We do not have a report of this on the 13th. At Nevelsky, we have fighting reported on the 11th and on the 12th. According to the Russian Defense Ministry, if the Ukrainians are attacking, continue to build on their success. Previously, the Russians were already at the edge of Nevelsky, and subsequently they got pushed back all the way to the further back. So the Ukrainians are slowly making grounds at Nevelsky. Moving into the Marinka region, we have continued fighting reported over here on the 11th, 12th, and 13th. According to the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, we do not have any details or whatsoever about Marinka. Nobody cares about this place anymore. Very sad. So, you can marinate more of this chicken. And there's nothing over the Novo-Mikhailivka region. There is, however, fighting reported at Mikhailsk, according to the Russian Defense Ministry on the 11th. This is a continuation of previous reports of fighting around this region, with the Ukrainians very tempted to actually launch an attack to capture Mikhailsk. But it looks like any attempt to attack seems to be wiped out. So they are probably currently reconsidering their options. Because the Russians are very determined to hold the line here, as this is actually, to the Russians, a major line that they must hold, because there is this river here. This is a good place to hold, and they can actually put a pressure on this major stronghold of Voleda. So moving into the Zaporizhzhia front. This is Zaporizhzhia, and this is the Zaporizhzhia front. And at the Velika Novosilka sector, at this sector, there is reinforcement reported on the 13th. They are the 3rd Assault Battalion of the 80th Airborne Brigade. So it looks like some good forces are moving into this area here, probably to make this one final push to punch through UROZHAINE and hit Zavine Baziania. So situation over in UROZHAINE. Before I go into the sources, I just want to say the Russian forces are holding the southern part of UROZHAINE, and by holding is also probably very wonky, not very strong. It looks like they are struggling to hold this position as we speak. The Ukrainians are holding the northern part. The entire center here, this is actually gray zone. It's the front line, but the Ukrainians are definitely putting pressure to push out the Russians over here. There is fighting reported on the 11th, on the 12th, according to the Russian Defense Ministry, saying that the Ukrainians are actually making the push. Deep State UA and Riva also reported about this. And by the 12th, it's only the Russian Defense Ministry talking about this. The Russians, however, according to the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, are also counterattacking at UROZHAINE on the 11th and on the 12th. And by the 13th, the Russian Defense Ministry and Vostok Group of Forces continue to report that they are continue to attack Ukrainian positions. So this definitely not exactly to reality. The reality is according to various mappings and information, the Ukrainians have already made very good progress in UROZHAINE. The Russians are holding on at the edge, and multiple videos have shown that the Ukrainians have some sort of fire control around this area here, probably artillery, but there is also a geolocation of a Russian BMP getting hit around this area here. So there could be still infantry over within the town, but any vehicles coming to this area here is in high danger of getting killed off. So on the 11th of August, we already have information from Ryba and Surya maps talking about the Russians withdrawing to the second half, the lower half of UROZHAINE, and since then, it looks like the front line has consistently pushing southward. So it's probably soon that the Russians will have to be ejected. Will have to retreat entirely from UROZHAINE to this new line at Zavine Bazania. because UROZHAINE is largely flattened already. It's very hard to hold positions when it's fully blown up. There is Ukrainian attempt at the fighting in the east of UROZHAINE, according to Ryba, and according to Ryba, they say this is an attempted pincer, with the Ukrainians pushing this way, and actually in the east, they call this a pincer, probably. And over at Staromayorsky, there is fighting reported on the 11th, with the Russians saying that the Ukrainians conducted reconnaissance in force. But on the 12th and on the 13th, information all suggests that the Russians are on the attack, or at least they are actually conducting fire missions on the Ukrainian positions within Staromayorsky. On the western part of Staromayorsky, we have fighting reported on the west on the 13th of August. Ryba reported is the Ukrainians are attacking. However, the Ukrainian Defense Ministry say the Russians are attacking. So we're not sure. But definitely the Ukrainians are developing this pincer plus frontal attack to definitely capture the entire area here. And I believe they are going to be successful given the tide of war in this area here. The Russians seems to be on the back foot in this area. So I don't think the Russians will be able to hold this UROZHAINE much longer, but Russians are still at UROZHAINE. I know some of you guys saw the video, say the Ukrainians are dropping artillery on some Russian foot soldiers. So the Russians have some infantry walking this road down to Zaporizhzhia. People say it's running. I have no idea how you're going to see they are running, because they are so small in the video and the video is so blurred. The Ukrainians probably use a drone, spotted them, and artillery strike them. My hypothesis is that these troops are actually doing a rotation. They have been replaced by another troops within UROZHAINE, and they are actually just walking back. This walk probably is not going to take a long time. We are talking about a distance of simply 2.4 kilometers. So this is just 20 minutes, 50 at most. I give half an hour slow walk to your resting position. Because of the distance is so short, it's likely that the Russian commander say that just walk over, man, don't waste fuel. So and they got spotted, and then artillery shells drop on them. So I do not please, I think it's very lazy analysis to say, to just base on the video and say, oh, the Russians have been ejected, they are running and escaping away from UROZHAINE. That is just poor analysis. That is just an instant of shelling. That's it. There's an instant of shelling of infantry that's walking along the road going down to Zaporizhzhia, and they got shelled because because they are so exposed. It doesn't say anything about Russian positions within UROZHAINE. So yeah, I think that is not right. I saw a lot of comments on the quick update, and I just want to say no, that's just not how I do analysis. So that's all from the this sector over here between Staromayorsky and UROZHAINE. There is fighting reported at Priyotny on the 13th of August. According to Ryba, infantry from the 1st Brigade tried to break through, but did not work out. And that's it from the Velika Novosilka sector. Moving on into the Orikhiv sector, because there's nothing over at the Huyaipole sector. At the Orikhiv sector, the Ukrainian forces continue their offensive against the Robotyne. So fighting is reported at Robotyne on the 11th and on the 12th and on the 13th. Sorry, this fighting is reported southwest of Uspenivka, probably around this area here. So they are attacking in the northern part of Robotyne. And there is also information of fighting at Robotyne itself that actually went into the village somewhere in the outskirts, but did not manage to gain a foothold. And according to Ryba, they reported that the Ukrainian forces are at the eastern outskirts of Robotyne. So which means the Ukrainians actually may have attacked from the north. Maybe they gain some stronghold in this position in the north, and then they are also attacking on the east in some kind of pincer of sort, if you like, or attacking from two different directions. Ryba say is 1 kilometer, and this is exactly where it is. 1 kilometer from the town. This is actually where the front line is. And there's also good reasons why this is the front line at Robotyne, because there is a major entrenchment just east of Robotyne. There is no indication that the Ukrainians managed to capture this entrenchment, this stronghold. So definitely the battle is still ongoing. Robotyne is one hell of a difficult place because there is still major trench line on the western part of Robotyne, and there's another one in the south of Robotyne. So this is actually one hell of a fortress position for the Russians. So this is actually extremely difficult for the Ukrainians to hold. And as such, the Ukrainians are actually pushing eastward, and fighting is reported 3 kilometers east of Robotyne. According to Ryba, they say that this is actually a position where the Ukrainians have managed to gain a foothold on. And Surya Maps also reported that this fighting on the 12th of August. On the 13th of August, Ukrainian Defense Ministry said that the Russians tried to counterattack the Ukrainians in this position. And there is also reports of the Ukrainians attacking from this stronghold that they managed to establish in the eastern part of Robotyne. So the Ukrainians, while putting pressure on Robotyne itself, actually went eastward and managed to capture ground. And likely they will continue to make improve on this this advantage, or this momentum they have, and try to push out. Fighting is also reported towards Verbove. So this is Verbove on the eastern part of Robotyne. And the Ryba, the pro-Russian source, reported on the 12th of August that the Ukrainians are attacking towards Verbove. 4 tanks under the cover of the forest tried to advance along the road, and then they got hit by the Russian forces. So they are moving probably along the road. I'm not sure exactly where. They say there are forests, so maybe it's around this area here that the Ukrainians are actually moving towards Verbove. Then they got hit by the Russian forces. So that's probably what happened. Surya Maps also reported on the 13th of August that the Russians actually have some success in the area of Novoporovska. So the Russians apparently have some attack in this area and managed to control a bit more ground around this area here. And that's all from the Orikhiv sector. Just to add, the Russian source, the pro-Russian source Ryba, reported there's a high rotation rate for the Ukrainian forces in this sector. Apparently, the Ukrainians are rotating twice a day, and the airborne forces from the 46 will be replaced by the 46th Brigade of the National Guard, and then they will just replace each other and rotate. And this is actually very important information to know, because that suggests this area here, the Ukrainian forces are constantly quite fresh as they go on the attack, and the defenders, if they are not rotated at the same intensity, they will not be able to hold the defense, because they will be too tired to defend their positions. If the Ukrainians keep attacking, every time they attack, it's a new fresh force that is attacking, and then it's the same old defenders staying at the position. I don't think they will be able to hold this position, and this could be indicative of why the Ukrainians are having good progress across various front lines, because the Ukrainians are making some good progress, especially at the Novosibirsk sector, and maybe they are also employing this strategy of rotating troops at high intensity, so that they are able to consistently keep pushing, maybe launch 3 attacks a day, and tiring out the defenders, because ultimately the Russian forces are also human beings. Despite they are always called orcs, but they're actually also human beings. They need to rest, need to sleep. So that's all from the Zaporizhzhia front. And moving into the Kherson front. At the Kherson front, we have fighting reported at Kozachi Lahire. Oh, I don't know how to pronounce this. So anyway, the Ryba reported that the Ukrainian forces continue to have a position in the western part of Kozachi Lahire. Previously, we have reports of Russian forces trying to clear this Ukrainian force. It seems to fail. The Ukrainian forces attack again at Kozachi Lahire, but so far have no success. Information suggests that the Ukrainians continue to shell the town from across the other side of the river as fire support. So they have infantry here. The fire support is across the river on the other side, and firing across like this, and then hitting the Russians' position. Reinforcement also is reported to this bridgehead, and so the Ukrainians are likely to continue to reinforce and strengthen their position in this western part of Kozachi Lahiri, and they might actually able to push out even in other directions, and this is going to threaten to become a major breakthrough if the Russians do not take this landing force seriously. And once the Ukrainians start to run all over the place, then it's going to be extremely difficult for the Russians to keep track of where the Ukrainians are. Fighting is also reported at Dachi. According to Ryba, they reported that the Ukrainians are still fighting around the Antonovsky Bridge, and the Russians sent a detachment to try to attack this Ukrainian positions around the bridge, and so far this looks like a disaster for any soldiers that is deployed to this area here, because that looks really sad. I saw one video or photo. Is it a video or photo? I think it's a video of Ukrainian forces going into under this bridge. I'm not sure if this is the Antonovsky Bridge, but they were basically sitting just next and opposite of some dead Ukrainian soldiers that was already rotting. The skin already turned black. So I'm not sure if that's the Antonovsky Bridge, but it looks horrible. Reinforcement is reported at Valentinsky. These are tanks. The tanks are reportedly sent to here to create fire support on the Russian forces across the river. So yeah, so that is happening. So maybe I thought this is interesting for you to understand. Over the Black Sea, we have another missile strike at the Crimean Bridge. According to the Russian Defense Ministry, they said that this is a S-200 surface-to-air missile that was converted into a strike version, and then they are allegedly intercepted. And then Ryba also reported about this, and then in the videos there is smoke coming out from the bridge. So Ryba actually clarified that this is actually just a smoke screen, and this smoke screen deployed over at the Crimean Bridge area is actually well documented. This is actually to prevent drone strikes and surveillance and whatever. So so that is the smoke. That's actually not the missile hitting and causing the smoke. There is also a massive drone attack on the 11th of August. Before that. And the 11th of August, the Russian Defense Ministry actually came out with a statement clarifying the detail. Up to 20 UAVs were attacking the Crimean Peninsula. So 14 were destroyed by air defense, 6 were by electronic warfare, and basically that's about it. So, and moving on, over at the southwestern part of the Black Sea, the Russian Navy intercepted a cargo ship. So the cargo ship is called the Sukhra-Okan, fly under the flag of Palau, and this is actually they were intercepted by the Vasily Birkov, and then they were boarded by the Russian Marines after the cargo ship did not respond to the warship, and the warship actually fired at the cargo ship to force it to stop, and then they actually inspected the cargo. But it looks like the cargo is perfectly fine, and then the vessel was let go, and then they actually continued their voyage all the way to Ukraine, to the port of Ismail. I think port of Ismail is here. Yeah, so this port of Ismail. So the vessel went up the river and then go to the port of Ismail. So that's all from the Black Sea. And that is the summary for the day of 534 to 536 for the 11th to 13th of August. Press the like button, subscribe if you are new to this channel, and I'll see you in the next update.